Good evening and welcome back to the third tier. It's Monday, the 19th of April. It's good to be back. It's been a long week at work, and I'm just glad it's Monday night and we're back talking about League One again. Introducing our usual suspect, Matt. Matt, how are you?
I'm all right, as long as you don't talk about Saturday. Well, you can talk to me about Saturday up until about 4:30. After that, I'm not interested.
We'll just pretend it didn't happen, eh?
That's probably the best idea tonight, yeah.
Yeah. And just introducing our guest, Rich. Rich is a Swindon fan for his sins, and it's good to have you on the show, Rich, discussing all things Swindon. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. If we're not talking about the Gillingham result on Saturday, can we not talk about Swindon's season? That'll probably be better for me. But thank you for my one and only appearance. It's a pleasure to be on.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. It's been a tough time for a lot of football fans this year, mainly sort of Swindon fans. But talk to us about how you've coped with watching sort of football through iFollow and not being at the stadium supporting your team.
Yeah, for me, it's not been too bad because I'm not a season ticket holder at Swindon. I'm not from Swindon, so I've never been a 46 game or 23 game a season sort of fan. So, I was going quite a bit the last couple of years. And so following on iFollow is almost a little bit better in a way, because obviously it didn't exist before for UK followers before, but the novelty wore off very, very quickly. Even if football fans pick and choose which games they go to, whether it's once or twice a month, you soon miss those occasions. And the biggest concern when you're not doing very well is that the floating fans and many of the hardcore stop caring or just find new hobbies and other things to do on a Saturday. And what we'll soon find out next year for Swindon is how many people have kept the faith, because the club on and off the pitch have really put us through the motions, and there's not much to cheer about regardless at Swindon at the moment.
Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear what's going on, because it's not nice for any football fan to go through. But have you found with iFollow that Swindon fans have completely lost interest because of what's been going off the field, and they sort of have been tuning or talking about the football as much, or is it in some ways brought them together a little bit more and you're discussing it a bit more in depth?
I think there's still a little bit more solidarity, but on social media, you're kind of in your echo chamber, aren't you? You kind of think everyone's still talking about it. I would love to see what Swindon's stats are, because almost every week there are threats that they'll never watch it again. And then the same people are saying the same stuff a week later, aren't they? So I think generally football fans, whether it be Swindon, Gillingham, Blackpool, whoever, when the going is tough, we tend to be a bit more united in our support for the club, aren't we? So I do, especially with the court stuff that's happening at Swindon at the moment, there is definitely far more unity than there is usually. But unfortunately, it's always in these sort of perilous situations.
Yeah, we'll come on to talk about Swindon and what's been going on in your season so far, and Sheridan very soon. But we'll first touch upon the shocking news that hit late last night, at prime time American in America. No shock that the Big Six and there's will be carrying out a Super League. And this is, like I said, it's quite a big threat that it actually might happen, and it's going to be a catastrophic event for football globally, and obviously fans. It will affect fans all through the pyramid. So I don't want to give it too much airtime. I know the Seasiders Pod are doing a special sort of half an hour or so on it after this show. So tune into the Seasiders Pod just after 9 to sort of see that, and they will give their views on it as well. But Matt, we'll come to you first. Obviously, there's probably about 16 to 20, 30 different bits of news across to do with this, but what's your sort of overwhelming thoughts so far on it?
It's disgusting, I think, is the politest way to put it. We're live on a podcast on a channel where kids might be watching, so I'm going to refrain from using language that I think applies to these 6 football clubs. Certainly in England, I'm not going to concentrate on too much on the foreign side. That doesn't affect us per se, but I just think it's borderline criminal what they're doing. For me, the interest started to go in. You know, we're on the third tier podcast for a reason, because we all follow third tier sides, and we all understand that there's more of a community feel and a connectivity with us and our football clubs that you don't get up in the Premier League. Obviously, you two have supported clubs that have played in the Premier League. I've not had that privilege, or whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure it is a privilege anymore, to be quite frank, but just seeing the comments that have come out from some directors today saying that yes, it is for a money purpose, and you know, the long-term protection of football in England is a secondary concern. It's just scummy. It's snaky. I get that this announcement was made prime time over in America, but the fact that it come out around midnight in England, which is the country that it's affecting the most, I thought, for me, it just didn't sit right. And I know Gary Neville's been very vocal, and it's interesting how he's involved, because obviously he has the thing with Salford, but I think he's spoken very well from what I've seen. But for me, my interest in the top flight is minimal at best now. It was less than it ever was when VAR came in. I don't like that. It's ruining the game. The old adage of it's not broken, don't fix it. Why are we trying to tweak the game that we've loved and enjoyed? And it's given us something to talk about on a Sunday or a Monday or a Tuesday at work, in the pubs, on a building site, whatever we're doing during the week. You know, if you get done by an offside call, you can go and moan about it to your mates. But all we've done with VAR is we've moved it away from the referee on the pitch and given that power to someone in a truck 500 miles away. Don't get it. It was advertised firstly as minimal intrusion, maximum impact. It was only going to affect, you know, majorly wrong decisions. It's just ruining the game. It's taken the emotion out of it. So to then have this on top of it, nah, it's not for me anymore. My dad's a Tottenham fan, and I've always looked out for Tottenham's results on that basis. But I stood in the away end when Gills went to White Hart Lane a few seasons ago, before anyone questions whether I'm a two-club person and that type of thing. I'm not. But I've always looked out for their results. But for me, them 6 clubs, they don't exist anymore. They're ruining English football. They could ruin it further down the pyramid in the longer term. And it's not the game I was brought up on. I'm nearly 40. For me, I was brought up on Manchester United, Liverpool, Everton. I know they're not one of the 6, but in the 80s, the early 90s, FA Cup Day was the biggest thing in the world for a 10-year-old. You know, you was allowed to watch the football all day. It was grandstand. It started at 10. The game was at 3. There was all the build-up. There was the ceremony afterwards. Greatest day if you're a 10, 11, 12-year-old watching football before the days of Sky. And let's not make any bones about this. Sky ruined this football 1992 effectively, when they brought the Premier League in, and for all the good that it's done a lot bad as well. You can't go to a football match now for less than 25, 35 quid in the top flight, whereas before it was probably about £10 a ticket. You can't buy a football kit now for less than 75, 85 quid. You're looking at over £100 if you want to get your kid's name printed on it on the back or whatever. It's everything that's wrong with the modern game. But sadly, it looks like this time it is real. It's not just another token threat to gain leverage in other things that they want. So if they want to do it, do we let them do it and just say to them, you're done in terms of the Premier League, the FA Cup, the League Cup, the Champions League, Europa League, and whatever? I'm not sure. But for me, it's not the football that I grew up watching, because those teams were where my heroes came from as a kid, because I wasn't old enough to go and watch Gillingham or Blackpool or Swindon or with my mates when I was that young. So you had to rely on what was on the telly. And there wasn't a lot, and then it was more of a privilege and more exciting because it didn't come around all the time. We're so saturated with it now that half the time I think you find yourself switching off from some of it, because you've got A-League in the morning, you've got Bundesliga at 2:30, you've got Premier League at 12:30, Premier League at 5:30, 7:15, and that's great because of COVID, and it helps us out that we can watch more games. But this was probably the final nail in the coffin for me in terms of the Premier League, and there's got to be something that protects the players, because they've had no say in this. I know Jurgen Klopp's come out tonight on Monday Night Football and said he's had no say in it. So what do his players do? They're being threatened with they can't represent their country if their team's playing in this competition. Well, there must be something that protects them. There must be some employment law. I'm no expert. But the whole thing just stinks, absolutely stinks of greed and corruption and everything that's wrong with football. But sadly, it's probably not something that's entirely unexpected anymore, is it? Such as the money that's at the top level of the game.
Wow. No, I couldn't agree more, mate. It's taken, in some ways, it's nice been watching football on the telly, such as the Premier League and stuff. But like you say, the love out of it with VAR, you just kind of expect every goal to be questioned. And even if there's fans in the stadium, that's going to be taken out of the emotion. And And this, like you said, for me, is the final nail in the coffin as well. We've had a couple of comments in. Thanks for getting them in, guys. So this is Joe Affers on YouTube. I think the only fair thing to do on the ESL is to expel the 6 from the English football, let them play in their friendly league, no relegation from the Prem, and promote the 6 from each EFL league. Really good shout. There, there's been discussions about what the domino effect does, but yeah, for me,
you're a Blackpool fan.
He is.
So I've got to promote the top 6 from each side.
But no, look, in all seriousness, as a Blackpool fan, I'd like to see us do it on merit as well. But if it came to it, it came to it. But we like to earn promotion. We do it a lot through the playoffs, and it's been a great season to see. And see it to end this way would be awful. Dan has said, been inevitable that there'd been a new independent Europe World League set up for years to follow the money. One step removed by a club becoming a franchise in Asia. Move on without them. I couldn't agree more. I said it just before the show. I think if they want out, look, the only bad side is Klopp's had no say. The fans have had no say. The players have had no say. So is it fair to say let them go in a sense when we know as football fans that they are owned by people that don't love their club, and the fans absolutely love their club? So is it fair that they have that taken away from them? I don't know. This is more complicated than I ever want to get involved in. But I would hate for Liverpool fans or Man United fans who do genuinely love their club for it to be taken away just because their owners are greedy and corrupt and only care about money for their own pocket. So it's too complicated for me, but it's not a good state for football at the moment. So this podcast, FA Cup semi-day is an utter non-event now. It used to be a big event. Yeah, you're absolutely right. To be played at Wembley when there's no reward for getting to that sort of final now. It's the same stadium, etc. Yeah. It's just put great points, Matt. Yeah, well articulated. Josh has put, that's why I'm happy to be a born Blackpool fan. £90 for a shirt as a joke. We'd win the playoffs anyway. Playoff kings. Over to you, Rich. I know Matt's just sort of summarised it in a very passionate and articulate way. But what's your overriding thoughts on what's happening?
On the whole, I obviously agree with pretty much everything that Matt says. I do think football evolves. Once upon a time, they were outraged because footballers went professional. They were outraged when footballers were sold for 10 grand, etc., etc. But the thing that's wrong about this is the selfishness of what they're doing. Football is so global. They don't need to do what they're doing. They could find a way of making this obscene amount of money. I have to ask, at what point is it too much money to earn? When does it just get lost? Like, they get so much money, what do you do with it? And that's a poor person talking there and being envious about not having much money, but also just the very notion of the league. Tottenham fans, you're going to finish bottom. When does that novelty wear off? I don't want to go in an isolated league. If I'm one of these fans, regardless of the team, that some younger fans, some any age might be excited by this, but when they sit there and go, well, where's the first win going to come from? Oh, well, we'll win in the cups. Ain't no cups. What do you do? Oh, we just play these. We go, play these massive teams every week. How's it going? Not well.
Exactly. And if there's no relegation, then you just get beat by the same team season on season on season on season. Like you say, it's just monotonous.
Until you're not considered a big club anymore, and somebody else gets the golden ticket. It doesn't make sense long term to me. I'm sure they're really excited and they're going to do this money grab, but after that, people are going to get bored. Fans, the reason why these guys are playing football, they're going to get bored. And the players will get bored. I'm a silly example, but in Scotland, when players go to play in Scotland, and they're excited by the old firm, but then they realise they got to play 4 games against Ross County, and they soon go back to the Championship and other divisions, because the novelty wears off. And I do think the novelty would wear off, but by then the damage would be very
late
to be done.
Yeah, we'll move on. They don't deserve any more airtime, and I know the Seasiders pod are doing a show after this. So, like I said, guys, flip over to them at 9 or just after 9 when we're finished, and they'll talk all things and give their points in more detail as well. I'll certainly be watching because I can't wait to see their points. But we'll move on to the other bit of news. We'll come on to the sort of League One results from Tuesday and so on in a second. But the other bit of League One news completely relates to Rich here, and weirdly enough, I got him on the show beforehand, as I got Portsmouth on the show before they had the news about Jacket as well. So maybe I'm a bit of a curse, but it's a good situation in my opinion.
I don't think you'll be classed as a curse amongst their fan bases.
No, of course. I meant for the managers, but yeah, in this case, SHERIGONE is the name of this show. And yeah, and rightly so, is appalling record. 32 matches in charge, managing not even a point per match, 0.88, lost 20 in his spell, and just managed 8 wins and 4 draws. Rich, just a very simple question. It might be a one-worded answer, but was it as bad as the results say at every point of his tenure at your club?
Yes. There's this thing about Sheridan where, especially when you do a podcast every week and you talk about it every week, you kind of find yourself like thinking, are we going in too hard on this guy? Because the fact of the matter is, we weren't overly keen with his appointment anyway. I think he'd managed Chesterfield, Waterford, Wigan and Swindon in the same calendar year. None of them with any success. He almost took Chesterfield into the National League North or South, wherever the divide was. He went to Ireland to manage Waterford, called the division a pub league, including his own team. Then went to Wigan. He was taking them down under great restrictions, and he walked to take over Swindon, who weren't doing well, but we were not relegation fodder at that stage. And then we have free fallen ever since. I mean, it's funny because in this time we beat Oxford for the first time since the early 2000s. And that was, brilliant. He did it luckily by throwing our centre back up front for 30 minutes, and it just worked. It happens. He tried that 3 or 4 times afterwards. All went terribly. And we beat Bristol Rovers twice. Both games could have gone either way, and poor Rovers had a goal disallowed for a really contentious offside, and that changed the game because Swindon got their act together and then were quite good after that. But all of the losses have almost been, regardless of the score, repeat, rinse, start brightly, and by that I mean we're in their part of the pitch. That's start brightly. Might put a couple of crosses in for Brett Pittman. Then we slow down. Then the opposition begin to look threatening. Then they score. And then it's a question of, does this team want to batter us, or do they want to get their second goal and just call it quits? And we've been lucky this year, and that's kind of saved Sheridan a bit, because until the Wimbledon game, we hadn't really been spanked in the actual result. We've been outplayed a lot, but we haven't really sort of walked off 3-0 down at half-time and then been 4 down in the game. Teams have just gone, do you know what? Let's preserve our energy levels for the next game because this is fine. And then that's it. I mean, the Gillingham game, funnily enough, is one of the exceptions to the rule. Because we took the lead, I think, didn't we? And then you came out in the second half and went, lads, it's Swindon, and and sorted us out. But it's been a torrid season, and it's happened at the worst possible time within history. And we're also, our future isn't a guarantee beyond this season either. And Sheridan has he's just small fish in a big pond of absolute nonsense this year. But it was an awful appointment, and it went exactly how we thought it would go. What can you do?
Yeah, we won't give him any more airtime he doesn't deserve it. But we've had a couple of comments in again by Joe. Thank you for getting a comment in. Sheridan should never had a job in football again. Yeah, I couldn't. Yeah, and John, Pterodactyl, isn't it, Rich?
Yeah,
dinosaur football.
The Pterodactyl is gone. Yeah, his assistant manager is the caretaker, so it's absolute tokenism.
Yeah.
He's Tommy Wright is the caretaker manager, and he's a bit like Phil Neal to Graham Taylor's England boss. where he'll just fold his arms, sit behind and just agree with everything the gaffer says. And now he's in charge and you just think, what is going to change? He's got the same mentality. So
it's not rare, but it's weird that he took over and as Josh has just pointed out, Swindon looked safe when he took over. You're in a position where you're a reasonable side, and at the end of the day, you are good enough in terms of the team to stay up in this league. And the job he's done. Well, he hasn't done a job, as he is literally done a hit and run on your club, and it's just to add to your current woes. So, like I said, I'm sorry you're going through this, and fingers crossed off the pitch it gets sorted out, because on the pitch it needs to get better. But we'll move on to Tuesday's results, guys, and we'll come on to a bit about Noah and Rich and Swindon's season so far just a bit later on in the show. But I'm just going to share my screen. Apologies for using the BBC for this one. But my graphic messed up earlier. So we'll just talk about Tuesday's results. Matt, anything from you that stands out? For me, it's the Wigan victory, which didn't help Swindon at all. But that is my result from Tuesday, with some other big wins in there. So talk me through sort of what stands out for you.
Yeah, I'd agree. The Wigan one was absolutely massive, wasn't it? We said they probably had to win, 4 of their last half dozen, and they've picked up. I think they've won 3 on the bounce now. We'll get on to Saturday a little bit later. But the other one that stood out for me was Lincoln. I think we all had them down a couple of weeks ago as the ones that would potentially drop out of the playoffs, didn't we? But they're 3 unbeaten since the COVID break. They got a good draw with you. They then slapped MK Dons Tuesday night, didn't they? 4-0, really good performance. And like I say, they won again Saturday, but we'll talk about that in more detail. But no, I thought that was a bit of a banana skin for them. I know MK Dons are a bit hot and cold, but if you get the good MK Dons turning up, it would have been a really good game. But Lincoln were decent enough, and I think Brennan Johnson scored a hat-trick in about 11 minutes or something ridiculous, didn't he? So,
yeah,
no, that one stood out. Obviously, Wigan beating Sunderland. No one saw that coming, even though Sunderland had lost on the Saturday previous as well. Wimbledon, unfortunately for Rich, we don't want to keep rubbing it in, but all the other teams that needed to win seemingly won. So that was a massive result. We know Ipswich haven't been great since Paul Cook came in, but to beat them 3-0, still a really good effort from Wimbledon. And it just seems that season on season, they turn into, Bayern Munich for the last half dozen games and get themselves out of trouble. I think they could lose their first 40 in a campaign and they'd still find a way to get out of trouble in the final 6, because it happens season on season. We mentioned Ollie Watkins, didn't we? Not Ollie Watkins, crikey. Ollie Palmer, sorry. Sort of taking the goal-scoring burden off of Joe Pigott. But Pigott's been phenomenal, hasn't he? In a side that barely scores any goals. I think he's got about 16, 17 in the league. It's an excellent return. And Blackpool stuttered a little bit, but it's not a disastrous point. It's another point. It's another clean sheet. It's another game unbeaten. Doncaster had an horrendous trot, didn't they? Burton have picked up again after a little bit of a blip, and Oxford beats Shrewsbury. I don't want to talk about Oxford at the moment. But yeah, Rochdale right at the bottom was massive. That was the definition of 6-pointer. Rich, I don't know if you just want to touch on that one quickly, obviously, because you probably watched it.
Well, the Swindon Rochdale, yeah, we that was probably one of the worst performances that I saw, because we got really sort of, I wouldn't say pumped for it, but we were just like, oh, this is it now. This is the one where we've got to turn up and we've got to do something. And if they're not up for this, then they're not up for anything. And they weren't up for it, and they're not up for anything. Rochdale, we made Rochdale look, Rochdale were going down, and they played like a team that wanted to stay up. And that's the big difference between all of those teams that are winning, that are down there, and Swindon. They played us off the park, and it was embarrassing. Not because we were losing at Rochdale, it's just because there was the first 15 minutes was like watching a pub game, both teams. There was no shape. They were just running towards the ball up and down, and it was just like you were watching it. You felt sick, and then Rochdale scored and it calmed down. It was frantic, and it was just. You have to wonder what on earth the manager was saying to them in training and before the game for what we were watching. And we've given up on Swindon's season in terms of survival long ago, and that was that's where you sort of sit there going, I've just put 10 quid into this. What on earth am I doing? I wouldn't have done Tuesday night at Rochdale in a normal season. Oh my goodness!
I think. I mean, we haven't been there that many times this season, but there was certainly times at the start when you kind of know what you were going to expect from your club, and that's the worst thing about iFollow, because when you know you're not going to travel to Rochdale, you know you're not going to get in your car at 2 PM and go to the game. But when you're there, you can look at your laptop until 6:45 and go, yeah, let's just watch the game. You know, who knows? And then you put a tenner in, then you sit through, and then ultimately your evening potentially gets ruined. So, but yeah, that's probably the downside to iFollow. But yeah, not a good game. We've got Rochdale tomorrow, so it'll be interesting because they've got a good result. On the was it Saturday? Yeah, Saturday just gone, isn't it? Talk to results from Friday. So a mixed bag of results. Northampton gave Peterborough an early doors scare with an equaliser, and potentially with some of the way they've played this season. Thought, they might do it, but Peterborough sort of class shown through. But any games that stand out for you, Rich? Feel free to say Oxford, but yeah, I'll let you have your say on the result.
I mean, a lot of Swindon fans predicted Oxford to go up as like champions this year, so we were really surprised with how poorly they started, and because they have the players, it's quite entertaining being in the same division as Oxford, because every week I kind of see they have run-in with opposition fans, so it's kind of like it's not just me thinking this. Like, Oxford can be quite obnoxious, I think, for any of the guys listening. You are better than us, but you are obnoxious as well. Again, Rochdale beating Accrington, Wimbledon beating Swindon. So the teams around us again. I mean, Bristol Rovers, I cannot understand how they've got themselves into this bother. I'm not going to proclaim to be an expert in Bristol Rovers, but they're not in the same sort of mess as we are. And they just keep on making bad decision after bad decision. And I mean, Lincoln obviously are a better side, but their capitulation this season, absolutely crazy. And they've got themselves into this bother. And there's Wigan again. Fair play to Wigan. Really happy for them. They've had a really tough time, and they've stuck by Liam Richardson as caretaker, and he's got him up. Probably should have had him from the start anyway. So fair play to
him. Matt, any results?
Yeah, there was a couple. I wrote some notes after watching the highlights. The Hull game, Hull got away with a massive one at 1-0. Fleetwood scored their second. It was Carl Vassell. I think it hit him on the backside from the lad Batty's shot, and it was flagged for offside. He's a yard on. He's nowhere near off, and that would have put Fleetwood 2-0 up. So it's a shame Ben's not on tonight, because I'm sure he'd have given his opinion on that as well. But it comes back to poor officiating at this level. But again, we shouldn't be surprised by it, unfortunately, should we? We get it on a weekly basis, and I suppose it's like the inevitability of this European Super League. There's always at least one catastrophic decision in the EFL League One on a Saturday or a Tuesday. But yeah, it was a big win for Hull coming from behind as well, wasn't it? I know Honeyman didn't play. Maybe you thought that might be the game where they slip up, but they didn't. And I know if Anthony Northgraves is watching, the Hull fan, I kept telling him that Hull were going to drop down to third. Yes, I've definitely changed my mind now. They will go up automatically, either as champions or runners-up. MK Dons was a good win for them as well. I'm not sure what Portsmouth were doing. There's two absolutely brain-dead decisions in that game from their players. Charlie Daniels for the penalty is just an awful challenge. Just dangles a leg. It's something you'd moan at a kid if he was coaching under 10 side on a Sunday. Makes no attempt to go to the ball, just hangs a leg out. And then Jack Watmore at the end, awful challenge. I mean, he's not got much of the player, but he's out of control. He's over the top of the ball. Basically misses the run-in now. This is a kid that's been injured for, the best part of 2 years on and off. Gets himself back in the side, and now he's got to sit out 3 or 4 again. It's just stupidity and just, I don't know, it's just boneheaded. I can't understand it. But another red card in that Bristol Rovers game. I know I don't want to beat the Joey Barton drum and sound like I'm turning into him, but I didn't think that was a red card either for Ed Upson. They sort of roll around and have a cuddle in the middle of the pitch, and he sort of leans on Brennan Johnson, but there's no punch or elbow or headbutt, and I just couldn't work out why it was a straight red card. And I don't want to, annoy Lincoln City fans, but Brennan Johnson all season's had a habit of rolling around and falling to the floor a little bit easily. And I'm not being funny, but you're looking for the sniper behind the hoard in the way he's rolled about. He's done 3 or 4 each way and a little bit of a flip. And then, he's up miraculously and he's involved in the game afterwards once the player's been sent off. But no, I don't want to turn into Joey Barton, but they certainly don't seem to be getting the rub of the green with the big decisions. And at 1-0 down, they still had a go, to be fair to them. And I suppose I have to touch on the Gillingham game. For 72 minutes, we were absolutely immaculate and we were comfortably the better side. I don't care what anyone else says. We should have been 3 or 4-0 up. We missed a great chance first half through Ollie Lee. Header from 8 yards, misses the target. Verdane Oliver does what Verdane Oliver's done all season. It's a really good finish into the bottom corner. We get the second. I think we'd had 9 corners, but before the 60th minute mark in the second half alone, 9 in 15 minutes. Finally, one paid, and it was 2 ex-Oxford players that combined. And at 2-0, Tom, you've probably seen my Instagram post, and I'm screaming at my laptop, Gills lead 2-0 at the Kassam, and the playoff dream's welly truly on, and I'm giving it all this, and 15 minutes later, I'm not. And we collapsed for one reason or another. Yeah, it was definitely the Coronation Street theme tune for the last 15 minutes. But we shot ourselves in the foot, unfortunately. And I know I've had a bit of a rant, and I stayed off Twitter on Saturday night because I thought some of the stuff levelled at our players was entirely unjust. And I can understand fans being frustrated that we chucked away a game. But to be calling our players bottlers and pathetic and embarrassing, I didn't understand it. And people have given me their views and why they've said it. And that's fair enough. And that's why we're all on these types of shows talking. But for me, we haven't I don't know what we've bottled. We've never been in the playoffs. We've been in the playoffs for 2 days, from Wednesday to Good Friday at the business end of the season, because we played 2 days before everybody else, and everybody else had about 38 games in hand still. So I'm not sure what we've bottled. If we'd been in the playoffs, or if you fell out the playoffs now, you've bottled it. I understand that because you've been in there for a while. Or if, like, Sunderland look like they're bottling promotion automatically, but I'm not sure what we've bottled. We've never had anything to bottle. So I'm having another rant. It's turning into a ranting show tonight for me, unfortunately. But yeah, I understand the frustration, because for 72 minutes we were brilliant, and then the playoffs just went up in a puff of smoke in the final 20 minutes, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was. I saw the game at 2-2, and then the inevitable happens, and it's just frustrating. But like you said, I've watched Gillingham a few times this season, and like I said, no other team like many other teams, you've played long balls, you've played good football, and you've got some good results, but wasn't meant to be this year. And fingers crossed, like you said on last week, you can keep hold of some of them players, because if they're on year contracts, or their contracts are running out, then you could be looking at a different team next year. So fingers crossed you keep some of them. I've had some comments in, keep them coming in, guys. It's really good to see. But Matt Smith started the sort of results comments off with Andy Butler came in for Donny at the back and they kept a clean sheet. I think it's a really good shout. I was surprised to see his name on there, but if you need the job done, do it yourself, and fair play to him. A much needed win for Doncaster. Josh Mellon, beat Sunderland, lose to Rochdale would be classic Blackpool. Yep, absolutely. Matt Smith, really good point. Pompey falling away.
They got Swindon tomorrow, so they're fine.
Well, we'll see, won't we? But maybe you'll get that new manager bounce we talk about every week on this show.
Mourinho's available.
Yeah. Really good point. Lincoln getting players back and on a roll. Even when we played them, we should have never lost. Drawn 2-2. We were comfortably, a bit like you, Matt. We should have scored another 2 or 3 at 2-0 and had another away win under our belts. But they stayed in the game and they used their team. And one of the goals was poor, but one of them was a decent pass and a smart finish. Say what you want about the defending, but it was more guttering, that result. The fact we were 2-0 up. If it was 1-0, then 1-1, then 2-1, then 2-2, it would have been a good game. But they stayed with it and they're showing their class now. And they're a team on a roll. So watch out for Lincoln. Even and John, nice to see you. Hopefully your mug is all working out all right for you. Dan's, but tactical COVID break worked for Lincoln. I won't comment on that. Vassell and Batty are really decent players at this level. Just to touch upon, was disgusted by some of the comments box of fans about Steve Evans. Elephant in the room, I'm biased, but that Blackpool result is massive. I could not agree more. Going into that game, it just felt massive. Sunderland are a big side, and our home form, despite us being where we are and the undefeated run we're on, it's more of a case of we draw most home games, and out of the unbeaten run recently, I think we've drawn 5 at home before that game, or drawn 5 games 4 in a row at home, or apart from Gillingham and Peterborough, we were drawn every single week when we played at home. So to hold out and not concede against Sunderland, who didn't score as their game, they didn't score since February or something. The first time they failed to score in a while.
McGeady was unlucky first half though, wasn't he? That one where he jinked inside and bent it against the bottom of the post. He's unlucky.
Wasn't it? Yeah,
was that the start of the second half? Sorry, yeah. But no, fair play to Blackpool again. Really, how many goals has Kai been involved recently as well? He's been absolutely superb the last month.
Yeah, no, don't disagree. He's had a new lease of life and has found his confidence, and fair play to him. I think Maxwell had McGeady's shot covered anyway, but Gillingham having a great season. Keep your players and add a bit more, and you could be up there again. Evan's done a brilliant job. It's a really fair comment. Sorry, not bottlers. Yeah, absolutely agree with you as well. Also, the first game we should have won. Poor defensive errors. I'm not sure what. Oh, maybe Gillingham game. I'm not sure. Oh, no, sorry, Lincoln game. Yeah, that relates to the Lincoln game. We were ahead in that game, but we had a red card and gave away some silly mistakes. But Josh has put McGeady, quality, different class. Yeah, couldn't agree more. He was 35 years, but is level above sort of League One, whether he could, consistently do it in the Championship. But his feet were magic, and he was playing passes that I didn't even see, or sort of fans didn't even see. And I thought, why has he kicked it there? And all of a sudden, they're in behind the defence. So he's class, and he'll have a big say in the playoffs when it comes to it, because I don't see them getting automatic anymore. Moving on to the fixtures on tomorrow. Sorry. Some big games tomorrow. We'll start with you, Rich. Any that stand up for you other than the obvious at the top?
It is beginning more and more like detaching from League One as this conversation continues. My focus is very much on the bottom half, so I always look towards like Bristol Rovers and Northampton, Rochdale. Blackpool could do us a massive favour. But it's not about favours now. It's just, to be honest, we're just going to have a laugh for the last 4 games. To be honest, what happens for the rest of the year season is I wish you all well, but we're just going to go on a little bit of a jolly and hopefully play a couple of youth players and see how it goes. But I think I might keep an eye on the promotion race, because the race for 6th is looking good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's getting tasty, and we'll come on to the form guide and our predictions in a bit. But Matt, any other fixtures that sort of stand up for yourself? A lot of games that have a lot of meaning to them, other maybe than your Fleetwood Crew match. That every game has some significance, doesn't it? And I know every game at this part of the season probably counts, but it's unlikely that we'll see a season like this for a while, or maybe we'll see it a bit more now. But there's so much to play for still.
Yeah, definitely. Like you say, that's probably the only one where both teams are not going down and have not got, something riding on it in terms of the playoffs or relegation. Obviously, the 1/3 from the bottom stands out massively, doesn't it? Hull against Sunderland. Even if Sunderland win, you'd still think it's a long shot for them to get in the top 2 now, but it could open the door for Peterborough to go and win the title. So that's a massive game. Hull weren't at their best at the weekend, but found a way to get the 3 points again, and that's what they keep doing. You've just got to worry about Sunderland now. I know that this thing about Streaky Lee Johnson's been mentioned a few times on social media, and it's starting to prove again, because they went on that huge unbeaten run, and now they've lost 3 on the bounce, and you just struggle to put your finger on how it's gone completely the other way. It's not like they've won a couple, then drawn a couple, then lost a couple. They've just gone win, and then just started losing out of nowhere. And no disrespect to Wigan and teams like that, they should be beating them if they want to get in the top 2, and ultimately that's probably why they won't. But there was another one as well I thought was intriguing, is Accrington Doncaster, because they've still got games in hand. They both sit mid-table at the moment. But is there a small squeak now for Doncaster with 2 games in hand over 6? If they could win tomorrow night, suddenly the belief starts coming back. They could start potentially being a team that looks at 6th place again, because Pompey are wobbling. Last week we were saying Lincoln will be the only ones that get chased down. Now it seems that Pompey could be the ones that are being chased down, and it changes on a weekly basis. We keep saying the top 3 are safe, and Blackpool seem to be solid, even though they draw quite a few games. But the other 2 seem to sort of be chopping and changing in terms of form. One struggles and the other plays well, and then they flip it. Wigan, a massive game for them. I've backed Peterborough to beat Gillingham tomorrow. Unfortunately, I don't like backing against my old club, my home club. But I just think, unfortunately, the way we lost on Saturday is going to have a huge part to play mentally and physically. I think we put so much effort into getting in front, and to then collapse and lose it in the last 20 minutes. I think the players might just be a bit shot mentally now, but then they could go there and play with freedom, knowing that the playoffs is pretty much done, or is done now. So you never know. But I think Peterborough beat us tomorrow. There's too much at stake for Peterborough to slip up, and I think they've come through their blip a few weeks ago. But no, certainly some intriguing fixtures again. Northampton against Ipswich. I think you've got to fancy Northampton at the moment. Ipswich can barely get a shot on target, let alone score a goal. I don't think they've scored in their last 3 games. So there's some really intriguing fixtures Tuesday night, and we're getting to that stage now, aren't we? I know this is a full round of fixtures, but next Tuesday we'll get the games in hand played again, and the table will start taking more of a shape. And because it is still a bit weird at this stage where you've got so many teams have played so many different amounts of games. But yeah, some really good football to look forward to tomorrow night.
Absolutely. That concludes sort of Tuesday's look. Rich, we'll come on to you for sort of 5 or 10 minutes. So talk to us a bit about your podcast. What's it called? Why is it called it? And how did you start becoming a Swindon fan?
Cool. Yeah. So I have been supporting, I went to my first Swindon game in November 1990. So I'm, almost 31 years into this. I started supporting Swindon purely because my dad did. Like I said, I'm not from Swindon, but I'm from Wiltshire. So it is my county club. And I started supporting Swindon at a time where obviously Italia 90 was huge, but I was already following it from afar. But I lived quite a long way away from Wiltshire at that time. So I was already football obsessed, and long before Italia 90, but I didn't get to my own game until my first game until after that. And there was never ever really another club. When you're a kid, you sort of flirt with the teams that are on TV, and there is, like Matt said, it was the teams like Everton, Liverpool, Spurs, Arsenal. Manchester United weren't really in the equation in the late 80s in my memory. But of course, in the early 90s, they kicked in when Ryan Giggs sort of emerged. And it's been Swindon ever since. I've always sort of joked that the 2 constants in my life have been Swindon Town and Alan Partridge. It's just the 2 things.
I love the second one.
My whole life, from day to day onwards, and then with Swindon from 1990 onwards. And I've seen it all. I've seen us in every division in the top 4. I've seen us in the Premier League and the 3 Football League divisions. I fear with every passing week that it won't be long till I see us in the 5th tier as well. But I think following Swindon, you see pretty much everything. I don't think we've had scandal. We've had the absolute highest echelons of success in the terms of that playoff final in '93 with Glenn Hoddle. We've had major names at the club, and we've also had just the most turgid time as well over the years, where we've lost a lot of fans along the way because of the way we've been owned. Several administrations. And you just stick by it, don't you? I mean, I didn't start watching football because of the way the business operated. I started watching football because I love watching the game itself. And I miss the innocence of the pre-internet age where football was something, CFAX, local news, go into the game, and sometimes only finding out you'd signed somebody on loan on the way to the game, listening to it on the local radio with your dad, and a lot of that I miss. And now, like with the podcast, before we started, we were talking about like the lack of connection with the Premier League. Since doing the podcast, I think I've never been more distant from other sort of levels of football because I'm so focused on Swindon Town that my knowledge of just football as a broader sort of thing is just completely gone. I started the podcast 3 years ago. There was a different podcast for a few years called The Wash Bag, which I really, really enjoyed. They had a great blog and it was all going well. And then they called it a day. And then there was a couple of years gap between. And it was one of those sort of spur of the moment things where I just found myself offered a microphone And it just went from there, to be honest. And ever since then, I mean, the original idea for the pod was to talk to ex-players. And for the first 2 years of the 3, that was the main thing behind the podcast, was talking to ex-players, all current ones, if they were willing, about their careers. I prefer the retired guys because you get the full journey. But that season, I decided to focus more on the current events as well as, and we got promoted during that, so it was very exciting doing that week to week. You know, it's great doing weekly podcasts when you're doing well. And this year, because I essentially put myself on paternity, one of the guys, Connor, he took over from the hot seat, and poor Sod's been looking after the podcast pretty much this year with our worst season in our history. You know, we have not lost more games in a season in the league than this year. 27 we're on now. We've never lost more games than that. So poor guy. But you don't lose the love of just covering the football club. I've never ever in my time supporting Swindon had a moment where I was like, I'm walking away. There's a time when I was in my late teens where you kind of sort of trying to get girlfriends and things like that, and you try and go out where, you know, football can take a back seat a wee bit. But I've never wavered, and doing the podcast is just my way of connecting with something that I can't be around. I'm not in any goldfish bowl. I've never lived in Swindon, as I've said. So it's my way of being able to talk to Swindon fans, because I'm in my real world. I'm not friends with any Swindon fans. My friends that Swindon fans are the guys I do the pod with now. And that's brilliant. And I've always thought about the poor expats who, you know, move all over the world, and just the fact that, you know, you look at your stats and you think, God almighty, there's people listening to this in these places. And it's just so thrilling that people are connecting with the club, and I can help provide that, which sounds a little bit, a bit obnoxious, I suppose. But it's just, I've always done this just for the bigger picture. And as a result of it, sometimes I find I'm in too deep. Like, you almost know too much stuff because the contacts you make, and it's really interesting. And at the same time, you kind of think, yearn for the days when nobody, you just looked at the Swindon news and the results, and that was that. But it's far bigger now. Loathed Strangers is the name of the podcast. It's a reference to the Nick Hornby book Fever Pitch, where there's a very small chapter based around Nick Hornby going to Wembley to watch Arsenal, who he supports, play Swindon Town in the 1969 League Cup final. And it's Swindon's greatest moment because we won the League Cup that day. And he talks about when Swindon score, it was the first time in the game that he noticed that everybody around him were Swindon fans. And he recalled listening to our stupid West Country accents and saying that he'd never loathed strangers more than in that moment. And it's that little snippet there is why the podcast is called The Loathed Strangers, which has proved quite a burden because, you try and get players to say it for stings and stuff like that, and they can't say Loathed Strangers. It's very hard to do if you're not saying it on a regular basis. It's a bit of a tongue twister, it turns out, especially if you're Norwegian and Jan Åge Fjørtoft. It took about 5 minutes to get him to say, "Hi, I'm Jan Åge Fjørtoft, and you're listening to the Loathed Strangers podcast." But he did a good job in the end. But yeah, that's why it's named. And now I can't imagine, not doing the pod. One day that day will come, I'm sure. But it's so much fun, and I really enjoy it. And and then because of things like this, you notice that there's the Gillingham equivalent and the Blackpool equivalents and the Accrington Stanley equivalents, and it's just really good hearing their perspectives. And then you just think, we're all the same. We're all the same. We're in our own little worlds, but we're no different. We just wear different colours on a Saturday, and that's brilliant. And I've talked to Oxford fans, and but it's just so good just being able to turn on your laptop and just talk to just strangers about their situations, and just think, God, I remember when that happened to us, or it gets better. Which is things like the Blackpool guys do, with the Swindon situation. And Blackpool had the most awful thing with the Oystons, and you got through it. and it took a long time, and that'll happen at Swindon. It's just that sort of community, which is so reassuring, and you just think, thank goodness for that, because I'd go insane if I was just sat with my own thoughts thinking that this is the end. It's really great.
Yeah, that's some amazing insight there. Thank you. And I completely agree with you. I live in Ipswich, or just outside of Ipswich, in a place called Manningtree, and I do a Blackpool podcast every week, and I talk to Blackpool fans every single day on Twitter, and they talk to me and they tell me what's going on in the club, and they send me pictures from round the corner at the stadium, and it's just my way of knowing that 270 miles away is literally in front of me. So I thank technology for that, and I thank the Seasiders podcast especially for inviting me on at the start of the season, and haven't looked back, and it's made me do this and meet people like Matt as well. So it's certainly brought me closer to.
It's not all good then.
Quick question. We'll come on to the table and the form guide in 2 minutes, guys. But quick question for you, if you can answer as quick as you can. If you managed to get Yates or Doyle and kept Twine from the start of the season, do you think the season would have been different?
I fail to see how it couldn't be any different. They've all scored goals this year. Doyle in League Two. Yates was the player that we really wanted. We were okay with Doyle going because of his age and for his reasons, but Yates was supposed to be the future, really, for Swindon. And if it wasn't, because we could have cashed in on him after a year or so as well, and that would have funded us quite happily. Twine was well managed by Newport. He's not being well managed by Swindon, and hopefully from next summer he'll get a new club who will look after him again, because I think the problem with Swindon was Scott Twine. He's a very good player, but we're not using him to the best of his ability, and we're just using him for long shots. And he's better than that because Newport got the best out of him, which is, that's not our fault.
Yeah, absolutely. Glenn, I live in Ipswich and support the Gills. Oh, nice to know. Small world. Thank you so much for Yates. He's quality.
We didn't sell Yates. No, that was Rotherham.
He was your player, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was our player, but no. Yeah. But you're welcome. We'll take credit for him.
Absolutely. Very final question, and before we get on to the form guide and the league tables, Dan has asked, could Wellens return, or is that ship sailed?
I think it really is dependent on the ownership at the moment. Wellens is better than Swindon as it stands. I know he had a terrible time at Salford, but Salford pulled the trigger far too early. I think Doncaster is pretty much his destiny now. I would take Wellens back. The manner of his exit still hurts a lot of Swindon fans, but I think they need to get real to that, because things behind the scenes aren't great. As it stands, I think our caretaker manager is here for as long as the current owner is here, and we have to just wait and see what happens. But I think that ship has sailed.
Fair enough. Some really good insight. And if you have any more questions, please get them in, and I'll try and get them answered as quick as possible. But we'll move on to the form guide, and then I'll predict very quick predictions on the promotion and relegation battle. Just quickly share my screen. Matt, we'll start with the top of the table. Some regular names, but just before I come to you, I just want to say a massive shout out to Wimbledon. They've scored 5 goals, then 3 goals, then 4 goals on the weekend. They've absolutely phenomenal last few games, and they've really stepped up to the mark, as you said earlier. But other than that, sort of top half of the form guide, any standouts for you other than Wimbledon?
No, it's starting to take shape now, isn't it? It's them that are up and around the top portion of the table, are in and around the top portion of the form table as well. So in that sense, it's starting to settle itself down. Hull just keep relentlessly rolling on. They're going up. I've changed my mind on that now. They're definitely going up in the top.
Finally, listen to me.
Finally, listen to you. Finally, listen to Anthony Northgraves. Peterborough, like I say, they was over that blip. They've just got that one bit of red now, and then since then it is 4 wins and a draw from 5. Frightening offensively. Schmodic, Dembele, Johnson, Clark, Harris, Moisa, £1 million striker, can barely get a game. Wimbledon, like we've said, it's their time of year, isn't it? They're like a horse that gets laid out for the Grand National. They just come alive in the spring, and they just keep winning football matches, and it looks likely now that they're going to stay up. So it's another team that's going to make me look wrong. Oxford, coming good at a key time. They had a bit of a wobble with 2 defeats. They've scored a lot of goals in their last 3 games. I think they've scored 6, 4 and 3, haven't they? So they're flying. Blackpool, still no red, still plenty of green, plenty of grey, so they're keeping themselves in amongst it. Charlton looking to gate crash. Burton had a wobble. They've picked up again, 5 unbeaten. Wigan giving themselves a real chance. Portsmouth's a weird one at the moment. Started absolutely fine under the cowl. He's had a real bounce and won 4 on the bounce, and then they've only taken 1 point from the last 3. So I'm not sure what's gone wrong there, but they just suddenly look a bit brittle and a bit naive again. Like I said, their defending at the weekend for the penalties is ridiculous. The decision making for the red cards borderline stupid. And MK Dons are in and out like they've been all season generally. Fleetwood, just a mixture of green and red, but they're safe now, aren't they? They're probably a little bit on the beach, the players. Lincoln's an interesting one, isn't it? They sort of remind me of Portsmouth a few weeks ago. So they was really struggling, but then it's back-to-back wins, got a few players back. I think there's talk now that George Grant's back in training. That could be a huge fillip for them with a few games to go. So they're going to fancy getting into playoffs. Rochdale hadn't won at home for about 300 years. They've won 2 on the bounce now at Scotland. They're giving themselves a chance. Plymouth, I got shouted at the other day by a Plymouth fan because I said they won't win another game this season, and they was about 10 seconds away from winning at the weekend. So I was quite thankful for a Burton equaliser, I won't lie. Sunderland, we've already mentioned, it's an odd one. Ipswich have had no bounce under Paul Cook. Northampton just doing enough to stay alive at the moment. Crew look like they're on the beach. Gills, the form's fallen off an edge of a cliff, unfortunately, at the most crucial of times. And it's only 1 win in the last 6, which has ended the playoff dream. Accrington, another one that season's probably fizzling out. And then the bottom 4 has got 2 in there that could go down. I'm sorry, Swindon have gone. I know Richard said that anyway, so it's no surprise to him. There's far too much red. Goal difference of -9 over a 6-game period is a huge concern, but that's been happening all season. Doncaster, just shoots of recovery with that win at Shrewsbury. Andy Butler, like we've already mentioned, decided, right, if you want the job doing, do it yourself and put him back in the side. Lo and behold, they scored 2 goals, kept a clean sheet. Another one of them weird anomalies. Another player scores against his former club, that Okanabiri. And Bristol Rovers are giving themselves loads to do as well. And Shrewsbury's form's just dropped off a little bit as well, but they're probably safe as well. So you can forgive them with the Steve Cottrell situation. So, but yeah, there's some weird ones, but predominantly now it looks like a lot of the teams are where they are in the table as well.
Yeah, thank you. That was a good summary there. Rich, we'll move on to the top end of the table because I know you're tired of looking at the bottom. Promotion for you is at the top 2. It looks that way, doesn't it? It's top 2 for you. That will go up automatically.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much sorted now, I think, and 2 thoroughly deserved automatic promotions coming in there, I would say. I love the playoffs. I'm a huge fan of it, and I would say Sunderland and Lincoln are probably there. But the rest looks like great fun. And when Swindon's doom is finally confirmed, I'll be fully all eyes on that race. And it really, I wouldn't put a bet on the final 2 places. It can easily switch to Charlton, Ipswich coming in at 5th and 6th. It really does depend on that sort of insane final 3 games where things just go out the window, don't they? And then you end up playing teams that are good, but they're on the beach. And the ones that are already down, that are already playing fringe players, and it just turns crazy. So, yeah, I mean, I think I do think Blackpool will get there. But after that, I don't know. Looking at Portsmouth's form, that concerns me, even though they'll probably win tomorrow. Ipswich are so hot and cold. So I think, I think Oxford might do it, but I think Portsmouth will just squeeze in. I think it'll be Portsmouth that will make it in the end. But it's going to be good fun watching. I look forward to it.
Yeah, I think tomorrow I know they've got Swindon, but they've really got to step up. And if you do get that goal, or they are fighting. Now Sheridan's gone. I don't know if that's had an adverse effect. I know the problem's much bigger than on the pitch, but they may find an early goal, and Portsmouth wobbles may continue. So it'd be interesting to see how they react to that game tomorrow for both teams. for me, Lincoln looked dangerous, and so do Oxford, despite them playing 42 games. That win is just gonna G them up to continue that run, and they may feel like they've only got 4 games to go, so they've only got 4 games to push, and the other teams might be worrying about that game in hand when it comes. So we'll see. Like yourself, I can't call sort of past 6th and 5th. Blackpool need to slip up a couple of times, and Charlton and Portsmouth need to win, and it becomes, down to the final day, which I still think it will come to. And as Matt alluded to earlier, Doncaster, with a win or a couple of more wins, at their level with Oxford's games, their game in hand is against Blackpool. It's at Bloomfield Road. Yeah, it's at Bloomfield Road. So it's going to be an interesting match, that one as well. We're in the fight for the playoffs. But Sunderland and Lincoln, for me, I think Lincoln are going to do enough. And yeah, like you say, there's anything from 5th to 10th down now. I don't think Ipswich will do it. They can't score. So Charlton are doing enough for me under Atkins. Actually, more impressive job than the Cowleys are doing, and I think his positivity may shine through. And I called there, if Gillingham won't do it, then Charlton will. So I'll go Sunderland, Lincoln, Blackpool, and Charlton. Matt,
having watched Oxford at the weekend, I think there were so many inconsistencies in their performance for the first 75 minutes that I don't think they'll stay in there. The goals we scored very easily. We created a lot of chances against them. It's effectively 18 minutes that have cost us that game. For the other 72, we made Oxford look very average. Portsmouth, like you've said, is a concern. Ipswich, not a chance. Absolutely not a chance. So Doncaster,
They got Swindon coming.
I'm not sure. So I think the top 5 are safe as ours is to me. So I still personally only think there's only one place up for grabs. I don't think Blackpool are in any danger. I don't want to do a Graham and say that, Blackpool are safe and in the playoffs and confidently declare it, and then it all goes horribly wrong. But for me, Blackpool are too strong. They've got too many options. They've got too many good players. But, so Blackpool are brilliant. Blackpool are great.
Please stop. You've predicted so many things that have gone wrong this season. So, no, the fingers crossed.
Well, eventually, I have to get one right. Law of averages.
You do. My only concern, and I say concern lightly as a Blackpool fan, that this isn't. I think Matt Scrafton, who's a Lincoln fan, he came on the preview show on Friday. He said to call it a run or to call it whatever you want to call it, it's more phenomenal than that. We played Ipswich, lost 2-0 17 games ago, our best run since 1968, and we've drawn a lot in that, and we've become hard to beat. But is it momentum, or is it we're just that organised and solid that we are finding ways not to lose? I don't know, but it's a really weird. If we're winning every single game, fair enough, we could say we're on fire. But because we've got that draw in us, or Lincoln pegged us back, there's still that worry in the back of your mind that it might happen elsewhere. But fingers crossed we continue. We've got another injury from Saturday. Our centre-back's just come back, Gretterson, who's absolutely phenomenal with Ballard. Against Sunderland, he's just dislocated his shoulder and he's going for a scan tomorrow. So they've got another centre back to come back in. So we've had 9 this season. So fingers crossed we continue. Tomorrow's massive. Lincoln have won 2 in a row, and if we do slip up, then it becomes a bit nervy. But I ain't going to overreact. We'll just have to see what happens. Moving on to the bottom 4. I'm not even going to mention the bottom team. Rich,
mention them. There we are. 24 flatters us.
78 goals. Conceded. But yeah, for me, I called Wigan and Northampton going down. It's still going to happen, but Wigan, for me, one of those games, 2 of those games they've just won, and they shocked me massively. I said they can beat anyone on their day, but I didn't expect them to beat Sunderland, then win again on the weekend. So every credit to them. They're showing fight, and if they stay up with the new owners next season, then they really will push on, in my opinion. So we'll start with you, Rich. Your bottom 4, if you can call it. I know it's still very tight, but
yeah, I think it's as it is. I think those 4 are the teams that are going to go down. It's kind of funny to think that a few weeks ago we were saying that this is going to go to the last day at Wigan. It might do for Wigan, but not for Swindon. No, I think Swindon and Bristol Rovers are gone. Rochdale, as you can see, they've had a nice little moment to build their hopes up. Northampton can have a moment, but gun to my head, I wouldn't.
Their running is shocking as well. It's
I think it's the 4. I think that's the 4, and a huge fair play to Wigan if they stay up. That's and Wimbledon as well. Shrewsbury have been perennially 18th all season, I swear, but I'm envious of that. And Burton being an example of, you change your manager at the right time, things can go well. But yeah, that's the 4.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think now there's a gap occurring, and if we can get a positive result in the next couple of games, and Rochdale fail to lose tomorrow, as we hope they do, and Northampton don't get a win, then you struggle to see how they're going to win sort of 2 or 3 in a row without Wigan not winning anymore. So I think that's starting to take shape a bit more than the playoffs now. But Matt, you bottom 4 as it is.
The bottom 3 look. I didn't realise it was suddenly that big a gap to the 5th bottom. So the bottom 3 look in real trouble, don't they? And I know we had Kaz on from the Gascast a few weeks ago, and I kept telling her that I think they'd stay up on goal difference or by a point, and you kept saying they were going down. But I think if there's ever a must-win game, they've got to beat MK Dons tomorrow night, haven't they, to have any sort of chance? But if they don't, I think that's the nail in their coffin as well. And I've backed Rochdale to go down all season, so I'll stick with them. And Swindon, unfortunately, 78 goals conceded, 5 losses on the bounce. Yeah, they're gone as well. So there's only 1 left for me. Northampton, though, I think they could beat Ipswich, so then that might drag Wimbledon and Wigan back into it. And Shrewsbury then are probably not just quite safe, and they've lost 2 on the bounce. They only need to lose another one, and teams around them pick up and win, and suddenly it all gets a bit more congested. And we've said for weeks and weeks that it was always 6 teams. It could suddenly then become 7 if Shrewsbury's form falls off the edge of a cliff. But 3 have definitely gone. I'm not picking the last one. Fair 2 enough. Have definitely gone. Bristol Rovers might win. I don't know.
Fair enough. We'll take a quick glimpse at the weekend's fixtures. We won't pick up our results. We'll go through that on next Monday's show. But just to run through the games, Portsmouth have got Bristol Rovers. That's 2 big games for Portsmouth with teams down the bottom. So they're going to have their say at the top and the bottom. Blackpool Shrewsbury, if they beat Rochdale tomorrow, they're going to go into that game fancying it. Charlton Peterborough is absolutely massive for Peterborough. For Charlton, sorry. If Peterborough don't win tomorrow, then they potentially slip up against Charlton, who are on good form. That's going to be a good game. Crewe Rochdale, again, that's more big for Rochdale. Is Crewe, Doncaster Fleetwood, Gillingham Northampton, Ipswich Wimbledon. I think Wimbledon can win that as well. Lincoln Hull, massive game. It's really good to see how Lincoln sort of doing that with the run of form they're on, and how Hull sort of play away from home at Lincoln, who are attacking and scoring goals at the moment. MK Dons Swindon. I'll go for a Swindon win to cheer Rich up. Sunderland Accrington, that should be an easy win for Sunderland. And Wigan Burton will probably be a really interesting match as well, just because of how Burton are playing and Wigan are fighting for their lives. So, sorry, you can't got much more time to go through those fixtures, but we'll review them on next Monday's show. I'll finish with tonight to say, if you're on Twitter, then we've got a competition running, guys, where you can win a home or away mug, and we're giving away 2 separate match passes. That's running until Thursday. That's the away mug that Matt is now showing us. The home mug.
Generation game.
Beautiful model there with a fresh haircut. And we're giving away 2 single match passes for weekend's matches as well. So there'll be 4 winners in total. So keep retweeting and subscribing to the YouTube channel, which you're now watching through. We're nearly on 150 subscribers, which only launched a couple of weeks ago. So it's really good to see. So please like this video, subscribe, and retweet on Twitter, and keep sort of giving us the push to create really good content. So thanks everyone for getting your comments in. Most of all, thank you to Richard.
You're welcome. See you in a year, 2 years, 3 years, never again. Who knows? It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we genuinely hope that off the field gets sorted more than on the field, because we don't want to see you go into any form of administration. And we'll keep fighting for you, keep mentioning you next week as well. So if you're on next week, drop a comment and we can have a little sort of discussion over the comments as well. And as ever, Matt, ever present, 100% sort of attendance rate. It's really good to have you back, and thanks for coming on.
Always a pleasure.
Nice comment from Dan to end as well. Top show, lads. Chin up, Richard. It might never happen.
It's happening.
I think it has.
It's happening. It is happening. It's happened again.
That's all for tonight, guys. Thank you very much. Good evening.